Good afternoon, dear friends. This is Ruslan Belov with you. Yesterday evening, Zelensky gave a speech saying many interesting things, including that Putin will die soon, although Putin is 72 years old, while Trump is 78, so bets should be placed on Zelensky. He also mentioned that Americans are now repeating Russian narratives, which is bad and obstructive. Well, it will be interesting to see the reaction of the American side to his statements. Meanwhile, we continue to study the situation at the front, as the fighting does not stop. Let's open the map. Belgorod, Kursk and Sumy regions. So friends, today we will start with the situation in the Belgorod, Kursk and Sumy regions, before moving on to other areas of the front. As for Belgorod, the geography of the battles remains unchanged for now. Let me remind you that it has been 10 days since the Ukrainian armed forces launched their offensive on the Belgorod region. During this time, they managed to take control of one village, Demidovka, and even that, not completely. As you can see on the map, Russian assault troops are still present on the northern outskirts, and fighting for the village continues. The UAF also continues assaults on Popovka. Yesterday morning, for example, under the cover of fog, they tried to rush into the village with a large column. The result? 8 pieces of equipment were destroyed. Most of the UAF stormtroopers were killed, but some managed to land and scatter in the tree lines south of the village. That's why this area is marked as a grey zone on the map. Fighting for Popovka continues. The UAF is not sparing its forces. Speaking of which, intelligence reports from yesterday indicate that Ukraine has concentrated about 4,000 soldiers and more than 100 pieces of equipment in front of the Belgorod region. Of course, they are dispersed across different locations rather than in one spot. Otherwise, they would have already been hit. But the total figure remains 4,000 troops and over 100 vehicles. So there is no room for complacency. On the contrary, defensive fortifications must be strengthened. Is Sursky preparing an attack on Belgorod? Many people in the comments are worried about this, but I don't think so. 4,000 soldiers is not enough for that. However, Krasnaya Yaruga, yes, that is their real target and has been from the very beginning. What else about the Belgorod region? Yesterday, 2 border guards called artillery fire upon themselves to prevent Ukrainian forces from breaking through into Popovka. Unfortunately, they died. I am sure they will be posthumously awarded Heroes of Russia because they acted as true border guards, defending the border at the cost of their lives. Kursk region. In the Guevo area, the front has practically frozen. Actually, not just practically, but completely. There is no movement at all. There are various reasons for this. Daily reinforcements from Myropol for the UAF and the village's inconvenient position for an assault. In general, no large forces are being thrown into storming the area. There is no massive offensive where a large army tries and fails to take the village. Instead, there is a slow creeping advance in small groups. But further north, the situation is much better. See that unmarked area on the map? That's what is still controlled by the UAF, just 8 square kilometers in total. The key point here is Oleshny and its surroundings. This is the last stronghold before the northern UAF bridgehead is completely eliminated. And I'll tell you more, Russian forces are already advancing from Kursk into the Sumy region. Sumy region. As I mentioned, probing attacks into the Sumy region have begun from the Kursk region. Right here in this section, American cartographers haven't fully updated the map yet, but in fact, Russian forces have already advanced up to 1.5 kilometers deep. At the moment, forces are being built up in these forested areas. The objective here is clear, Yunkivka. So let's go step by step. Basovka, objective, Lokhnya, and beyond that, Yunkivka. The distance now is small, only 5 kilometers from the current positions to the outskirts of Yunkivka. Juravka, objective, Belovody, which is only 800 meters away, essentially already at the village's outskirts. But again, the final goal is Yunkivka. Vasilievka, objective, capture the village and assist in storming Belovody. Vladimirovka, currently about half the village is under control. The next steps are an advance towards Novonikolaevka, and then along the road towards Yunkivka. So, as you can see, all the movements converge towards Yunkivka. The village is being encircled in a large pincer movement, and the advance from Kursk fits perfectly into this plan. If the UAF is preparing and concentrating forces in front of the Belgorod region, their prospects remain unclear. After all, a single brigade, because 4,000 soldiers with equipment is precisely a brigade, is not enough to achieve any significant results. This is not the Kursk region. Here, the defenses are prepared. The past 10 days, since the UAF's attempts to break through, have proven this. Again, I read the comments and see that many people are panicking, fearing that the UAF might break through to Belgorod. Just look at the map. Here is Belgorod, and here is where the UAF is concentrating its forces. Let's even measure the distance. As you can see, more than 80 kilometers. Do you think 4,000 soldiers and 100 pieces of equipment can break through to Belgorod? Zero chance. Honestly, even reaching Krasnaya Yaruga is unlikely, as the distance is still 20 kilometers. And judging by the first days, not even the first days, but 10 full days of their offensive, they are stuck in the defenses and cannot even capture a single village. Belgorod, Krasnaya Yaruga. They might try, of course. That's why they are amassing forces, bringing in a whole brigade. Sumy region, a different picture. But here's the key point. If the UAF is preparing and concentrating forces in front of the Belgorod region, then the Russian army is doing the same in front of the Sumy region. And here, the prospects are much clearer, more tangible, more realistic. Look, for now, the offensive has been carried out by relatively small forces, yet progress is already visible. Currently, the Russian army controls about 50 square kilometers in the Sumy region. Yes, step by step, creeping advances, but the results are accumulating. Now imagine what happens when a full-scale operation begins. This entire pocket will collapse. Other frontline updates. Let's briefly go over other sectors of the front. Right bank of the Zherebets River. Yesterday, the Russian army advanced 3 kilometers, specifically on the front line from Novolyubovka to Katerinovka. Once again, the advance was about 3 kilometers, meaning Russian forces are already on the outskirts of Katerinovka. What does this mean? This creates a stable foothold for a future assault on Lyman. Plans for a summer offensive on Lyman definitely exist. Toretsk direction. Near Toretsk, Russian troops advanced 1 kilometer, aiming to strike at the rear of the UAF garrison in Sherbinovka. In general, the situation for UAF forces in the Toretsk area is worsening daily. Even Ukrainian military analysts admit this. The so-called Fortress Toretsk is over. Bolshe-Novosyolovskoye direction. Fighting continues near Vesyoloye as Vostok units push towards encircling the UAF near Bogatyr. To do this, they need to reach Komar, but first they must capture Vesyoloye. Yesterday, all day long, battles raged for the village. Russian stormtroopers managed to flank the UAF garrison and seize a forest strip in the north, effectively trapping UAF forces in Vesyoloye. Fighting continues since the morning. Russian forces also continue advancing south of the main UAF defensive line. The village of Volnoy Pole is gradually being cleared and taken under control, along with the area south of it. Novopavlovskoye direction, March 27th. Yesterday, Russian forces launched a general offensive in the Vovchia River Valley as part of a broader push by two groupings, Vostok and Center, on the Novopavlovsk direction. In the morning, Russian troops entered Rozliv and secured positions in the eastern part of the village. Throughout the day, they worked on building up forces for the next push forward. Additionally, Russian troops attacked from Andreevka towards Alexievka and Bogatyr. Overall, the entire front here is active, and even pro-Ukrainian sources report that the UAF situation is worsening. That's all for today's Frontline update. Have a good working day. Take care.